Evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Let's go for another evening with Thomas Victor and myself. China, Iran, and Russia have aligned their efforts to challenge the US led global order, driven by a shared enmity towards the US and its allies, and anybody who looks like them. Sanctions, and what each perceives as a struggle for ideological hegemony. Their cooperation, while not a formal alliance, manifests itself in economic, military, and diplomatic domains, with the intent to reshape international norms and reduce US influence. Alas, this axis of dullards has a weak foundation, and besides perceiving the West as their enemy, they lack any other commonality. All three, plus North Korea, face Western sanctions, prompting them to develop alternative trade networks. China purchases significant portions of Iranian and Russian oil, up to 90% of Iran's and 40% of Russia's exports, undermining US efforts to isolate their economies. Though the purchases are made at discount rates, hardly beneficial to the sellers. The China Iran Russia network is investing in infrastructure like the North South Corridor and China's Belt and Road Initiative to create trade routes bypassing Western control systems. For instance, Iran and Russia plan to invest 25 billion in railways and waterways linking St. Petersburg to Iranian ports, although both the funding and the technology are lacking. They promote transactions in Chinese yuan to reduce reliance on the US dollar. While the stated aim is to weaken the global financial system's Western centric structure, in practice, it is limited to forming a bartering club of little impact in world markets. During the Biden administration and the weakening of sanctions sponsored by the Democratic Party, the trio has conducted trilateral naval drills in the Gulf of Oman, hoping to signal a strategic alignment to counter world, U.S. naval dominance in key maritime regions. Alas, only the weakness of their ill-equipped navies was displayed. Iran supplies Russia with drones and missiles for the Ukraine conflict, and we know how good those missiles were against Israel, while Russia aids Iran's ballistic missiles capabilities under the guise of a space program. China provides dual use technologies, and North Korea medium range missiles and cannon fodder. Iran's axis of resistance, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, intersects with Russian and Chinese interests as seen in Syria, where Russia and Iran attempted to prop up Assad's regime. Alas, Assad is gone, the Houthis are nearly gone, Hamas is practically gone, and Hezbollah is being defingered and deballed. Through organizations like the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, they push for a multipolar world order. Iran's Shanghai Cooperation Organization membership strengthens its current ties with China and Russia, and all three seek to exploit grievances in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, offering energy, arms, and support to regimes like Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. This club of the needy, helpless, and broke is largely opportunistic, driven by mutual opposition to the US rather than any ideological cohesion or shared objectives. Russia and Iran compete in illicit oil markets, and China is wary of fully endorsing Russia or Iran's more aggressive actions due to its economic dependence on US trade. China depends on the current order's trade systems, while Russia's effort to disrupt it by controlling energy supplies blew up on their faces as a consequence of Putin's adventurism. Iran's theocracy, seeking to cause a major military confrontation to force the 12th Imam out of hiding, clashes with Russia's new law self-imposed role as guardians of Christianity, a lofty proposition for Nazi onanists and kleptocrats. While China avoids deep military commitments mm, either as it prances about like a peacock in heat, trying to bedazzle the world with light shows and parades. As expected, this ludicrous challenge to a West still centuries ahead in social, technological, and commercial matters lacks a unified vision, means, and even an understanding to be more than a regional nuisance. In the US, the full front assault of the corporatist state on on our institutions, a pillar of support for the ambitions of the club of the bungling buffoons, has begun to crumble in less than 100 days after the inauguration of President Trump. Judges who had with impunity usurped the powers of the executive are being arrested for breaking the very laws they were charged to observe and administer, and many more are coming. The financial apparatus that promoted illegality at home and rogue regimes abroad is being meticulously defunded. The borders are closed to illegals, and the money laundering schemes set up to facilitate the illegal invasions, the electoral interference, persecution of opponents, and silencing of critics is already showing cracks. The axis of boobs at home and abroad is unraveling. This is Beer Blather 269, The Unraveling. I am Solmontes Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from my golden cage in Florida. And right here, and I got the right finger this time, I'll have you notice, is Thomas Victor, the only living expert in World War One flamethrowers, suffering with a patience of Job and endurance beyond the human, the humanly possible, the ravages of the sociotards that govern Mexifornia. And we're here to waste a couple of hours of our time or yours, if you'll have us, while we blather about these subjects and whatever else should pop into our heads. We're doing this through our uh, now the momentarily defunded channel in Odyssey, not because the channel was defunded, but because Odyssey was defunded by a bunch of Irish libtards. And hopefully they'll fix it. In the meantime, we're counting on you to continue to support us through quadverum.com/support us or by subscribing to my uh, uh, timeline in X at the Brother Lie, where it is also being shown as well as um, Thomas's timeline, the Thomas Victor, so that you know this is the one. And I don't know if we're going to pay any attention to chats outside of um, Odyssey tonight, but frankly, uh, what can I say? It all depends on the support we get on the channel. Because frankly, without money, we don't pay the internet, we don't pay the data transfer, and we can't keep going on. So thank you for your support, and let's go into the meat. How are you doing, Thomas?
Well, I'm embarrassed to admit I got this computer a year and a half ago, and I just realized yesterday that somehow I'd been accidentally pressing the keyboard shortcut to darken the screen.
Oh,
So yesterday I set the screen to normal, and now it's blinding.
oh
I'm so
boy.
used to the darkness, and unfortunately, I'm 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 planning on publishing 2 more military books and I have to figure out if I restore old postcards. I get all these postcards, and a lot of them are, they're either wrecked or they're faded or they're too dark or whatever. And so I use Photoshop magic on them, and now I have to somehow determine if I've set them to look normal in a dark world or not. As of right now, they look like, a lot of them look like shit. So I don't know what I'm going to do. If I've set these to the wrong setting, then that's like 5 years worth of work out the window. So I'd have to redo it, which means I know what I'll be doing until I'm 70 years old.
Well, that already puts you in a unique position in the world where nobody knows what the crap tomorrow will bring, and you know what you'll be doing till you're a septuagenarian.
It's pretty amazing. I've always wondered about this. Like, okay, I have no idea. I don't even know what keyboard shortcut. I have an Apple keyboard, and it's this hideous little miniature one, and I've used it because I used to get complaints from people that they could hear my keys going, because I had the old-fashioned type keyboard, and it's taken me years to get used to this little miniature Apple keyboard, and I keep apparently setting off shortcuts to doing things. Are you messing with your light?
No, the light is passing by itself.
Okay.
So I was, while you were talking, desperately looking for the camera settings so I can mess with the lights myself, but make sure that we have some kind of I don't
Okay,
know.
set it to where you think it's normal. I want to see what that looks like.
That would be normal.
That's normal for you? Okay, that looks fine to me. In my own window, to me, I look like I've got a Klieg light shining on me, and I look like some weird drunken mullah. But
Somebody says that you look like a sea captain.
so has my appearance changed to the audience?
No, well, not really that much, but they're complimenting you on the arrival of your beard to its full splendor.
Yeah, I keep forgetting I have to buy beard balm. The reason I comb it is because it has a natural tendency to start rising up like this. And so I look like an atomic explosion. Speaking of explosions, the Iranians suffered a massive port explosion, and before the explosion, the smoke seen rising was bright orange, which means
Oh,
Saul.
we're looking at missile fuel,
Exactly.
and this time is like ammonia tetrachloride.
Yeah.
This thing is, it, I mean, really, how stupid can they be? They had the situation in Beirut, which was caused indirectly by Iran as well 5 years ago, and now they have the same situation almost exactly, and all you have is like poorly stored uh, missile fuel.
Well, in both cases, there was a fire before there was the explosion. And I'm not entirely convinced that the Lebanon explosion, the Beirut explosion, was accidental. I think there's a possibility that somebody did that deliberately because it blew up all their advanced missiles. And we know that because they didn't use any advanced missiles during the war with Israel.
Yep.
And in this case, in Iran, it was the same thing. There was a fire going, and then there was this god awful explosion The footage I saw, it was somebody filming um, relatively close, and then you just saw that washing machine effect as the cameraman as his camera was blown out of his hands, and he was diving to the earth and all of that. But the mullahs say, oh, it accidentally blew up. I think it's more likely than not that somebody did it. Just
Yeah,
because.
I'm on the fence because you know I I think I was telling you earlier the mullahs are undoubtedly evil. They're also incompetent, ignorant, and stupid.
True.
So it, I have a tendency to never attribute
You never attribute
violence
to.
what can be explained by stupidity.
Right, that's called Hanlon's razor. It's a
Yes,
science fiction thing.
yes, and frankly, it's worked for me before.
Sure.
Uh, could somebody have started a fire? Yes. Was that the Israelis? I doubt it. Was it the Iranian opposition? More likely, if that is the scenario. But I still think that these freaking imbeciles were. And by the way, the ammonium tetrachloride was coming in from China.
Mhm.
What the hell is going on there?
Oh, I just put I'd forgotten. I'd taken off my. It's a screen that protects my eyes from
Oh,
blue light, and so here's with,
I see.
and then here's with, and this is this was like prescribed by my doctor. Uh,
Makes sense.
so
Because
it looks a
you
lot
you
better.
you want to be able to find your Winnie to pee 10 years from now, right?
Well, I was in the hospital in 23. I had to have a little operation, and there was this really attractive young Asian American woman as a nurse. And at some point, we were talking just. You have to fill out the allergy list, and I told her I was allergic to avocados, and that she gave me um, well, she told me how sorry she was because she was addicted to guacamole. And we just started talking, and then we started talking about the blue light. I asked her, how can you do an entire shift under these fluorescent lights? And she took off her really attractive glasses, and she said, these aren't prescription glasses, they're just designed to filter out the blue light. And so I went and I talked to my doctor, my ophthalmologist about it, and he recommended this screen thing. So it, it
Okay.
it blocks out the blue
Kill,
light.
kills the blue light, and that's always a good thing.
Yeah,
Um, I may try it one day.
yeah,
But
because
anyway,
yeah.
yes.
No, go ahead. You said
I
anyway.
was gonna say, you have two shiploads of ammonia and sodium perchloride
Mm-hmm,
from China,
mm-hmm,
probably packed, only the way only the Chinese can, and that has been for months at the port.
mm-hmm.
I guarantee you that is improper storage.
Well, do you remember the gigantic Chinese explosion that blew up an entire port?
Yeah,
And I mean, it just kept going and going and going as chemical storage unit. They were storing the chemicals in shipping containers.
well, that's exactly what happened here.
Exactly, and if you wanted to blow the entire port up, all you'd have to do is open up one of those shipping container doors and toss in a lit cigarette
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
and get the hell out of Dodge.
Or just leave them sitting in the sun. Eventually, it'll do it too.
That too.
And by the way, when you say the entire port, it's like right now, the entire port is gone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's so bizarre. You have these countries that they hate us, they hate the U.S. They say the world is unfair. It's unfair that we're so far ahead of them, but we don't store our rocket fuel in shipping containers out in the middle of the sunshine. We do things different than the Chinese do. We do things different than the Iranian mullahs do. We do some things the same, such as the corruption of our political parties, um, the refusal to adhere to the rule of law if you belong to one particular political party, for example. We do that the same, but in terms of our safety, I mean, you know, we don't have explosions like that. We've only had a tiny handful. There was that famous one in, I think, the late 1980s, and someone was standing on a mountaintop filming this factory blowing up. You know, it was a,
Yeah, wasn't there one in Texas in the 1990s?
yeah, that may be the one I'm talking about. And it was
Yeah,
a, you'd see the explosion and you'd see the white shock wave spreading outward, and you
yeah,
know, people 5 miles away had their windows blown out, etc. And we've had train derailments that you know, spilled chlorine gas, for example, that people were killed, but not on the level of the Chinese and the Iranians.
no, no. In and plus, we're talking about explosions, not leak of gases like Bhopal or
Mhm.
something like that. Speaking of Bhopal, yay! We have another route between India and Pakistan. Uh,
Yeah.
there is a frontier, a, a border post between India and Pakistan, where you have the Indians on one side, the Pakistanis on the other, and they march in a threatening way that looks very much like cartoons. What, what, it's like they're doing a chakra to each other. And at the end of it, like a cartoon, they kind of shake hands and go home.
Mhm.
Now they're doing it on a massive scale. Now they're doing it on a massive scale. And it's going to flare up a day away soon. We're not going to have a full war between these two. Uh, but boy, it's going to be quite a spectacle when they start giving the finger to each other on a regular basis, but with a cannon.
Well, people should understand that what happened in the disputed area of Kashmir. Um, there's it's called the Alps of India,
Yeah,
and unfortunately, there's no security, and it's completely isolated. So Indians go there, you know, for reasons of tourism, and four armed men came and started checking everybody's ID, and they murdered all men who were Hindus. And
yep,
I think the final death toll was what, 25, something like that.
yep. And,
And
and and let's face it, there's nothing the Pakistani government can do to stop these assholes.
well, okay, the group that claimed credit for it is accused of being an offshoot of the group that carried out the Mumbai terrorist
Yep.
attack. And it's it's doubtful that the Pakistani government, okay, the Pakistani inter-services intelligence, or ISI, has created more terrorist organizations than any other government organization.
Than Al Qaeda.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
in the first Trump administration, we dropped the Moab on the Pakistani ISI, and the Pakistani the trainers. They're part of the oh, I forgot. They're part of the. It's like the okay. It's like the CIA Special Operations Group.
Yep.
The Pakistanis were in Afghanistan training
Training
terrorists,
ISIS.
and we dropped a Moab on them, and we wiped out the entire field trainers of the ISI.
Yep.
And the Pakistanis couldn't admit to that. The idiot, the Guardians went and they said the caves are still intact. And it's like,
No shit, Sherlock.
we didn't drop a Moab on caves. A Moab is a surface blast weapon.
It's an air blast.
It's an air blast weapon. So the Indians reported that we killed the entire all the terrorist trainers. They were all in Afghanistan, and we killed them all. And so
some of the reports mentioned 500 of them.
Exactly, and it's unclear if the Pakistanis are still creating, if the ISI is still creating terrorist groups, or if they've lost control and these are now popping up on their own. The Pakistanis are angry because the Indians have cut off all water to Pakistan.
Yeah. Today they opened one of the dams, and there is a flood coming to Pakistan. You wanted water? Yeah. Here's your water, asshole.
Well,
the river is peaking, and it's coming into Pakistan. It's going to be interesting.
Well, when the Indians, or when the British moved out of India and gave India her independence, Pakistan was created the following year. In the same year, it was 47, I believe.
Yes.
As the Hindus moved out of what is today Pakistan and the Muslims moved out of what is today India, they managed to murder over 1 million of each other.
Yes.
So these are people who, I mean, this is why when Indians come to the United States, they do so well, is because there's nobody trying to murder them for being Indians, for being Hindus. You know, they come here and they're basically left in peace.
Listen, there is, I remember already in the 80s, there was a huge Indian community in Queens, New York. And they had all the stores around, I think it was 24th Street East, definitely in the 20s, but could have been 28th. And these people worked their asses off,
Yeah.
literally, in various trades, retail, appliances, clothing. The first thing to appear were little stores with imports from India, because of course they had contacts, with all kinds of copper things, from candle holders to doorknobs, and cotton fabrics and shirts and all that jazz. And within a generation, they were pretty well to do. Their children going to Ivy League universities, eh, and they remain kind of separate from the rest of New Yorkers, but at the same time integrated into the culture of New York. I don't know if that's clear at all.
Well, generally speaking, Indian culture is more dour than American culture. And Indians, I mean, the violence we're talking about where 1 million people were killed, that was only in 1947. So, that wasn't 500 years ago. And you get to the point, we're now, there's a lot of third generation Indian Americans. They're totally Americanized. They go to their, integrated schools, and they view themselves as Americans. And, you have people going into the government. becoming congressmen, becoming governors. You know, Nikki Haley, for example, she's an Indian. And Nikki Haley is married to a non-Indian, and you know she's not part of a segregated community. But you know, Indian culture, traditional Indian culture, and American culture are you know pretty much diametrically opposed. And you know, India is still home to multiple massacres, sectarian massacres.
Remember the Tamils?
Yeah, yeah.
People forget, but in my lifetime, I lost count. Uh, when the Tigers of Tamil Nadu had their war in Sri Lanka, it spilled over to India, and in fact, it was a Tamil uh, uh, terrorist that killed Indira Gandhi's son,
Yeah, Rajit.
um, Rashid. Now, there were also um, in the Punjab, all of the Punjabi independentists that had taken refuge in the Temple of Amritsar. And the Temple of Amritsar was like a major freaking arms depot. And Indira Gandhi sent the army there, and I don't know how many hundred died. And it was two Sikhs from that particular terrorist organization who killed Indira Gandhi in as she was taking a walk in her residence. Uh, every other month, there is a group of someone's killing another group of someone's because I don't know, they stepped on a rat in a temple, or they didn't salute properly a monkey in another. It's or you know they found a guy eating a hamburger at a place where you don't do that. Uh, for the most strange reasons from our mentality, these people are ready to kill.
Well, despite what the Democrats would tell you, we've had multiple attacks by jihadist terrorists. There's been no anti-Muslim pogrom. There's been there was you could count the number of anti-Muslim terrorist attacks on the fingers of one hand,
Yep.
and in the most high profile attack, the victim was actually a Sikh. He wasn't even a Muslim.
That was after 9/11. It was a florist, a Sikh florist in DC. And
So
some idiot killed him because he was wearing a turban.
yeah, and you know the Democrats will tell you, you know, everybody's in danger of being murdered by the right wing, and in reality, nobody's in danger of being murdered by the right wing. You
No,
and I, as conservatives, are in
but
more danger.
we're picking corpses with a shovel, courtesy of the left.
Well, that's the thing, that you and I, Saul and Tom, are in more danger from leftists than Muslims are in danger from right wingers.
Yeah.
That's, you know, we've both been swatted. We both have gotten death threats. You know, so
Oh, I got another one, by the way, this week.
yeah.
Hey, I have a collection. One of these days, I'm going to do a video with the threats from these imbeciles, which, by the way, I you know why I don't speak about that often? Because I am ashamed to have such stupid enemies. You see, the measure of a man's worth is the worth of their enemies. And if this is the best I can do, I need to change something.
Also, if somebody swats you or does something, and you give them, okay, Tim Pool went through this period. where every time he got swatted, he would announce it and go on TV and do all that. You never want to do that because then, of course, you're going to get more of it. And the thing is, I mean, years ago, I had to take action to get someone who showed up at my house. The idiot went to the wrong house because I don't actually live where people think I live, and I have the
There are
ability.
several houses in that neighborhood.
Well, also I have the ability to see who's going where, and if somebody shows up looking for trouble, then they're going to have the hell beaten out of them, and you know this is long past the statute of limitations, so I can admit that I did beat the hell out of a guy who showed up, a member of Antifa. And so I sent him back to his rulers with the message to leave me alone, and I've been left alone ever since. Um, but you know, we're just not a country that. I mean, we're one of the few countries on the face of the earth that the citizens do the right thing out of the desire to do the right thing. We don't live in a police state. Like, okay, I saw something about the collapse of Yugoslavia, and the first thing those people did was they all started killing each other
Oh yeah.
over shit that happened in the 14th century. And the reason they hadn't been doing it under Tito is because Tito ran one of the most brutal secret services, and I was interrogated by them once, and it was not fun. And they made it very clear that they were letting me go because I was an American. But if I had my passport stolen, and they accused me of selling the passport. And I was lucky. I found out later from the U.S. consulate that they hadn't just tossed me in prison and forgotten about me. They'd done that before.
That's usually default.
Right. And so we don't have a police state keeping our people from murdering each other. The political left is in a period where it wants people to start murdering each other based on ethnic, racial, and sexual orientation, and political adherence. But it's not going to happen. Leftists are going to get more and more violent. And I think this time around, I think we're going to see some protective detail open fire on somebody on live camera, and we'll see, somebody.
It's bound to happen.
Yeah.
It's bound to happen. These people, it's like these idiot judges.
Yeah.
It is one thing to shoot your mouth off, say in Blather, or even bragging about what you're gonna do during dinner with a bunch of idiot friends, or even in a press conference on the steps of the courthouse, and a different one is actually doing it. So it's like Schumer uh, threatening Kavanaugh and Gorsuch at the Supreme Court because you're going to rip the whirlwind, and it would be a different one for Schumer to start beating the hell out of Gorsuch as he walks out of the courthouse, right?
Mm.
These judges have been threatening to not do anything to help ICE, and to not do anything to allow illegals to be nabbed in their courtrooms. By the way, they will never be nabbed in anybody's courtroom because arrests cannot be conducted inside the courtroom. They can be conducted in public areas like the hall outside the courtroom. And it is a different thing for a stupid judge to be advised that we're going to arrest this guy when he comes out of your courtroom, and have the thing coordinated with the chief judge in that courthouse. And then the stupid cow ushers the criminal who is in court with charges of domestic violence and
Mhm.
child abuse.
Mhm.
And she ushers him out of the courtroom and sends him on his merry way to the street, so that the arresting officers have to give foot chase
Mhm.
outside, which endangers it. It is one thing to nab the guy. By the way, why would they want to nab him at the hall in front of the courtroom? Because that's inside the court building and they know the guy is not armed. He just went through a metal detector. In the street, all bets are off and people can die. So this stupid cow really thinks she has this magical power to walk all over the law and break it at her will. And the next thing you know, you have a mugshot of a judge with a legal case that is going to bury the stupid cow. And it's gone. Now, I'm not going to cry. She used to be with Catholic Charities helping illegals into this country. Now she managed to get her ass into a courtroom helping illegals to avoid the law. Enough is enough. Just, lock her up. The same thing.
Uh,
Now
yeah.
another judge says that she's not going to sit in her court until this is clarified. Good. Stay
That's,
the fuck out of a court. You don't belong in there.
yeah. God, that Wisconsin judge has that bizarre, like, alcoholic street person look.
Oh, yeah.
Um, okay. Why is the judge crying hysterically in her mugshot?
Because she's an idiot. She never thought this was going to happen.
Oh,
In,
okay.
in,
Sorry, I
in,
just found
in,
out that
in
that's an AI image. Never mind. But okay,
oh,
we've had two
well,
judges arrested.
in
One,
in in the actual action, she's not smiling.
well, the we've had two judges arrested. One was harboring Tren de Aragua terrorists in his
Well,
house.
that's the one in New Mexico. That man looks like somebody whose wife beats him every Saturday.
Yeah. No, I mean this is madness. And
They
okay,
they got him rifles.
the Democrats are saying that this is heroism, and that um, everybody needs to start harboring Tren de Aragua and MS-13 terrorists in their houses. And let me tell you, if leftists start doing this, I don't care what happens to them. I don't care. I
No.
mean, they get what they deserve. This is madness on a level we've never seen before. Like
Yeah, but it's the same that you were talking about. That's why you reminded me of this.
well, this is the thing that all these idiots are they're equating they're equating Tren de Aragua and MS-13 terrorists with say freedom marchers from the civil rights era. Like remember there
Yeah.
was a guy
Well,
who
one thing I can tell you, the Tren Aragua asshole who was living with the judge and his wife is not Martin Luther King.
well, this is what I'm saying. And
Yeah.
Democrats are equating those people. They're okay. I
The
watch
poor
a lot of
victims.
I watch a lot of movies on Netflix and Amazon, and we went through this period sometime in the 2000s, where every movie that took place um, in say the southern the southwest part of the country, at some point the hero who's being chased by criminals, he gets help from saintly illegal aliens, who are riding in the back of pickup trucks, and he gets pulled up in the pickup truck, and they give him a sombrero and a serape, and he passes for a saintly illegal alien. And it's like this is absolutely ridiculous because
Yeah, by the way, I don't know illegals that cross the border wearing a sombrero and serape.
no, that's the thing, that it's
That's a label on a tequila bottle at this point.
okay. The series Breaking Bad, which was such a massive hit, it has a lot of patronizing crap being said about Mexicans, especially Mexican illegals, and a lot of really breathless admiration for the cartels. And it's really quite grotesque because in Mexico, okay, today or yesterday, there were like five arson attacks against civilians by multiple cartels. The cartels used to have a mafia like um, code of honor where they didn't harm civilians, and now what they're doing is they're deliberately targeting civilians to show what badasses they are.
Yep.
And there's these cartel guys are shown as the the ass kickers in Hollywood movies, and it's like, but they're murdering women and children. That
Yep.
there's this notorious video of cartels just riding down the street firing fully automatic weapons, and the video was taken from inside a kindergarten, and the kindergarten teacher is trying to get the little crying children to sing along so that they won't be so scared as they're all lying flat on the
Yep.
ground. And it's like, you can't make movies about these guys showing how you know
Remember when they took a school bus with 50 students
yeah,
from a high school,
yeah,
and it took the Mexican police, those brilliant servants of law and order, to find them cut in pieces.
yeah, yeah.
And they said, oh, okay, frankly, anybody can, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not so worried about America. Anybody can kill and mutilate the defenseless. Now try it in Idaho.
Well, Mexico has some of the strictest gun laws in the planet.
And that's
So
why only the cartels are armed.
exactly.
Eh, 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 Over here, you said something. How peaceful uh, and law abiding the Americans are. Uh, the more I think about it, of course, if we take 5 cities out of the statistics, 5 democratic cities with stringent gun control laws, uh, the U.S. ranks top in safety in the world. 60% of our population is at any given time, right now, as we're speaking, more than 15 miles away from the nearest cop.
Yeah,
Most of the country, you have to look hard for police. Of course, if you're in an interstate, you're going to have the 10 patrol cars are going to be there writing tickets and making a budget. But in our towns, there are no cops around. Not ever. If you call a cop, it could be up to 20 minutes before they show up.
Well, and in every one of these cities that have the highest gun crime rates, the cops are under strict orders to not enforce the law.
Yeah, but even then, the big cities. I lived in New York for a long time. I've seen the worst of New York, and I saw New York when it was very livable, and all it took was a little policing.
Exactly.
Period. Uh, Remember the what is it that he called it? Giuliani implemented.
The
Um,
window pane,
yes,
the broken window.
the
Um,
broken window thingy. It's you enforce the law in the small crimes, vandalism, graffiti, and higher crime is reduced. And it was true. When you create a culture of law and order, criminals have a more difficult time.
well, also, okay,
But
I
even,
watched a
but
lot
even,
of,
but even then, when you consider the small number of police compared to the population of New York, it's amazing that such a small number could put order in that city.
I watch a lot of true crime stuff, and whenever you watch true crime programs that are hosted by Brits, Canadians, and Australians, they don't know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to the U.S. and their whole thing is that you have to take away everybody's guns. If we take away everybody's guns, then there won't be any more crime. Well, the first mass shooting that happened in this country happened in 1949.
Yep.
It happened in New Jersey in 1949. That is the first mass shooting in this country's history. Mass shootings became more common after we shut down the state and federal mental institutions.
Yep.
And in 1949, you could buy machine guns. Ronald Reagan outlawed machine guns in 1986.
You could buy Tommies.
Exactly. And there were no mass shootings committed with machine guns. The guy in 1949 committed his mass shooting with a German pistol he'd brought back from his service in World War II.
Yep.
And when you look at photos of this guy,
And you are
photos of this guy, he was insane. He had a flatness of affect that shows that he was a psychotic.
yep. But let me clarify something before the naysayers come in. You are of course talking to random mass shootings. You're
Yes.
not talking about the massacre of Saint Valentine's in Chicago.
No.
Of course, wars between gangs and wars between mafia families is a completely different story, and that
Well,
goes far earlier. Same thing in the West,
right.
but you're talking about the random killing.
But the St. Valentine's Day massacre changed how policing against the mafia was done. There was only one St. Valentine's Day massacre. So even that, Americans have no appetite for mass shootings, despite what Europeans and Canadians and Australians think. The reason we have so many mass shootings is that all mass shooters are mentally ill, and in the past they would have been locked up in a mental institution. And there's prior the worst school mass killing was carried out by a guy who was angry at the city founders, so he blew up a school with dynamite. And I can't remember the death toll, but he targeted a school full of little kids. It was in a place called Bath here in the United States, and he was a nutcase. He was a known nutcase.
Yeah.
So it's a cliche to say this, but it's not our guns that are the problem. It's the crazy
No,
people.
you know that I have my gun right next to me,
So do
and
I.
I'm disappointed because the stupid cow is right there, and it hasn't loaded itself yet, and it hasn't shot anybody yet. I wonder if I got a defective gun. Because the
Well,
way the
see,
Democrats talk, the gun should have acted by itself now.
well, if you were to leave crates of guns at all the homeless encampments in this country, you would have to have dump trucks come pick up the bodies.
No,
But if you were to leave crates of guns, um, say on my street,
or mine.
people would call the police. Nobody would pick up their guns and start shooting people. Only the crazy people do stuff like that. And every single mass killer who's left a manifesto, they're off their rockers. They're off their rockers. Um, I didn't know that incels call themselves incels. I thought that was an insulting term applied.
No, they do. They wear it with pride.
Exactly. And every one of the incels who's carried out a mass shooting is off his rocker.
Yeah. And how about the trannies? I mean, the one in where was it?
Nashville?
Nashville.
Yeah, Nashville.
That one finally the entirety of the Rambling Manifesto is available. It was leaked, of course,
Yeah.
and that tranny was completely off her rocker.
Well, and the Nashville cops, the 4 cops who went in to stop her, they shot her on sight. And then when she was squirming around on the ground, the plainclothes detective put 4 rounds in the top of her head and then said, "Stop moving." And my response to that is good. There
Yep.
was a period, if you just go by straight statistics, transsexuals are the most violent, dangerous demographic in this country.
We're already talking about paranoid delusional characters. What do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, just okay. That's another thing. The Democrats. The Democrats are I guess today Ocasio Cortez basically announced that she's running for president in 28, and
Please do.
well, the reaction is one of horror from her party. And they're
Yeah,
not going to.
it's the end of the Democrats.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to stop her. She's going to go up against J.D. Vance, and we're going to have one of those Richard Nixon style landslides.
Come on, the stupid cow wanted to run for president when she was 28, and people
Yeah,
had to tell her, "You're 28, you stupid cow, you can't."
yeah, yeah.
But she's a narcissist, which I fail to understand why, except that Mother Nature has a sense of humor. Because
Well,
there's
a few days ago, Jeff Bezos sent 6 women up into the troposphere and then back down. They were weightless for 3 minutes, and after they came down, they started announcing that they were astronauts.
yeah,
And
just like Laika.
well, it's the singer Katy Perry has now gone on tour wearing her spacesuit and singing songs about being an astronaut, and this has all backfired completely. It's backfired to the point that okay, the one of them is named Gayle King. She's Oprah's buddy, and she's angry. Boy, she's angry. This is misogyny to claim that they're not astronauts, and most of the others are keeping their mouths shut because they know that oh boy, we blew it. I think there was one of them who was actually trained as an astronaut, and she, of course, got absolutely no publicity at all. It was
Of
all
course not.
Katy Perry and
Listen, I just mentioned Laika. Laika was a German Shepherd bitch that was put in a capsule and sent, into space and back. Alas, Laika died. It was a Russian capsule. In the Gemini program, at one point, we put a monkey in a capsule and sent it up and down. Are they suggesting that the monkey and Laika are astronauts too?
well, actually, the chimp, his name was Ham, and Ham had a lot of different tasks he had to perform while he
Oh yeah.
was in space. These women did less than Ham. Ham is more of an astronaut than these women are.
There was a joke about one of these women, that was put in a capsule to go into space, and when she gets into the capsule, she's sitting right next to a chimp, and she says, "A chimp? They're sending me with a chimp." And she has a set of instructions that she has to open on the 12th hour of flight. And as they're getting ready for the countdown, the chimp starts, pushing switches and moving levers and lift off. And the chimp is manning the controls and says, "Oh my God, if this is what the chimp does, what do they have for me?" And 12 hours later, she opens the envelope, and in the note in there says, "Give the chimp 2 bananas." These idiots are that woman.
Well,
It's not a question of misogyny or not. It's a question of common freaking sense.
and okay, everything that the Democrats are doing right now is backfiring. Everything they're doing is backfiring in the way that everything well, it's backfiring in the way the Iranian rocket fuel storage backfired. I mean, the Democrats are they're convincing themselves. The New York Times wrote an op-ed about how since the fact that Trump's first 100 days were awful for him is good for the rest of the country, and it's like, how are his first 100 days awful? Give me an example. What did Trump fail
Wow.
in his first
Well,
100 days?
illegal entry into this country fell by 97% now.
Yeah.
Without additional funding and without a comprehensive immigration bill that would fix the border, because without a new law, we cannot do anything. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently we can. There are sectors where in the past month uh, they got 17 people crossing,
Mm-hmm.
where it used to be, I don't know, 5,000 a day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, 17 per month. And next week, our Border Patrol officers along the borders, north and south, are twiddling their thumbs and waiting for the hours to go by with nobody to catch. And we're just about to reposition them so they can start raiding farms again, like it used to be in the good old days in California. Remember?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe uh, pork processing plants and other places where uh, illegals are known to gather in large numbers. They've already started. I think they did it in Los Angeles not long ago. They raided a parking lot at a Home Depot.
Mm-hmm.
Now I remember when I lived in LA that there were a couple of big parking lots. One was in Wilshire, where at 7 a.m. all the illegals gathered, and all the construction bosses came down in their pickup trucks and selected who they were taking to work with them for the day. eh, and that was like a supermarket of illegal labor. And every now and then, La Migra would show up and cause everybody to run like rabbits. We're going back to that like just about now. That's a good thing in the first 100 days. It makes me immensely happy.
Well, I've stopped listening to a lot of conservatives that are on YouTube. I heard one say today that like so many other conservatives, he's disappointed in Pam Bondi and Kash Patel.
I'm not.
And it's like, okay, look, buddy, just admit you were going to be disappointed no matter what. Just admit. And
They've always been a fifth column.
at least you'll be honest, because
Yeah.
what I guess they're talking about is Epstein in the case of Pam Bondi, because they think they're okay. Think about it. All the JFK files were released,
Mm.
and there was now it's gone. All JFK
Yeah.
assassination conspiracies are over.
What were you expecting?
Well, exactly. I was personally not expecting anything.
Bingo.
So they're going to release Epstein's little black book, and then everything will be over. And all these people who are pounding the table saying Pam Bondi is covering up something, the people who claim to be on our side, they're just going to fuck off. And I can't figure out. I haven't heard anything about Kash Patel that would make me be disappointed at him. Have you heard what the right wing
Jorge,
is complaining about?
you know that I wasn't too, shall I say, happy with the choices of Hegseth or Kash Patel or Dan Bongino for that matter. You know what? They haven't done anything that I could criticize right now. Pam Bondi, the biggest criticism this week is she has to spend more time in court and less time on camera. Actually, you freaking imbeciles, her work is being on camera.
What, they want the attorney general to be in court? Why?
Right. Attorney generals, listen, a little hint for the little mongoloid pseudo right grifters, in case any one of them happens here by chance. Attorney generals, one, do not arrest people on the street.
Yeah, she's not going in ride-alongs with her pistol and her badge.
The cops and the federal agents do that. Number two, attorney generals, unless they are playing some kind of stunt, do not try cases, do not even set foot in a fucking courtroom. Department of Justice attorneys do that. And by the way, Bondi hired like 1,500 of them. And they're redoing the civil rights section. And they put the National Security Department upside down. And it's working. This pretend judge from Wisconsin was in handcuffs within 24 hours of committing a crime on TV.
Well, okay.
Actually, not on TV, in front of agents.
See, one of the reasons the Confederates lost, number one, because they didn't have an industrial base, but
Go.
all the Confederate generals would sort of ride at the front of their troops, and they all got killed. Like Stonewall Jackson was a brilliant general.
I was at his tomb in Lexington, Virginia, and he was a brilliant general who had a death wish.
Well, this is the thing. After he was dead, he was irreplaceable. So,
Right.
do you want Pam Bondi to be basically in court and try? Okay, if Pam Bondi is in court, if she's going to be trying whatever pet peeve case you've got, that means she's not going to be able to do anything else.
Anything else, everything else is down the drain. Her job is to coordinate thousands of attorneys in dozens of departments to go after the most complex criminal way these countries ever seen. And they're doing a fairly good job of it. I have great expectations of Harmeet Dillon. Great. She knows what needs to be done. And look at him. He is arrested and deported 50,000 criminal illegals per month.
Yeah.
10,000 a week.
What
They're only warming up.
What people don't understand is that career criminals commit a massive amount of the crime out there. So people are complaining, why hasn't it been 11 million, illegals deported yet? Well, because the overwhelming majority aren't committing any crimes other than the crime of being here illegally.
Yep.
And
which is not a priority. I'm sorry.
A hell of a lot of them are self-deporting. Right now, okay, all you people out there who are unhappy, Tren Aragua took over apartment buildings and chased everybody out, took over the buildings, and were doing whatever the hell they wanted.
Aurora.
Right.
Aurora, Colorado. Yeah, they took
do you want them gone? Do you want them gone first? Or do you want ICE to go to the chicken packing plants right now? I mean,
how about to the cleaner's store on your block?
Well, see, this is the thing that these are people. Okay, I never knew anything about Candace Owens. When she started raving about Jewish people, I wasn't surprised. But it turns out that Candace is also a flat earther, and
yes,
she claims that the theory of the round Earth is Jewish. And Candace Owens also says that Jews created fake dinosaur bones to fool Christians.
Yes.
So Candace is one of those biblical literalists who believe that the Earth is 8,000 years old. And
actually 4,800.
Whatever. Now, what I always wanted to ask a flat earther is what's on the underside, like tree roots or
turtles.
Also, where's the edge? I want to go to the edge of the flat Earth. Where is it?
That's where the clicking Bushman threw the Coca-Cola bottle years ago.
Okay.
Remember, the gods must be crazy.
Right. There's got to be, but if the Earth is a flat disk, there's a pretty damn big edge everywhere. So I live in California. Tell me how far I have to go in a ship before I hit the edge of the Earth. Because, okay, if I take a ship and I go I go west, I'm going to hit Asia. And then let's say I take the Orient Express and I go all the way from Japan.
That was created. There is no Japan. There is no Asia. That was created for the Jews to confuse you.
Okay, I've been to Japan, so I do know there is Japan.
You're one of the Jews who created it.
Possibly, but if I take the Orient Express and I end up in Europe, then I get on another ship. That ship is going to take me going west. It's going to take me to the United States. So, and then if I cross the United States and get back to California and then go west again by ship, it's just going to keep happening. So where is the edge of the planet?
The abyss At the end of the world is between the years of Candace Owens.
Okay. Another thing, if the Earth is flat, what keeps the water of the oceans on this flat disk? Is there a rim at the edge of the world? Is there a
Yes,
wall? What is there?
there's a rim. There's a rim. It was made by Jews so that the oceans could stay in and fool you.
Okay, so they did a good thing then.
Yes, by mistake.
Yeah, by
No,
mistake, of
you
course.
can you can. These people are beyond stupid, and she's not the only one, by the way. We have for too long, for too long. We have well for too long we've been silenced. Number one, because I want to say, why didn't you say that earlier? Well, let me see. Between November of 2018 and last year, I was silenced. I was swatted twice, and I was saying this from the rooftops, but barely if you could hear me. These people are venomous. They're grifting bastards. They're no better than Ocasio-Cortez, and in some respects, worse. She is more honest than they are. I've had it with the pseudo right. I've had it with the anarchists who find Trump like a pimp finds Jesus. I've had it. I cannot take them seriously. I cannot stand people who take them seriously. Whenever somebody comes to me quoting them or whatever, they'll be glad if I don't block them or not talk to them ever again. Because I've had it with these people. The
Well,
same thing with Laura the Looney.
I mean, when Trump became president, it was a given that Candace Owens, Laura Loomer, um, what was that I forgot his name. Um, had a Vitch at the end of it. Blagojevich? No, he's some.
Blagojevich was the governor
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Illinois who sold Obama's seat or who tried to sell. He tried to sell Obama's seat to the son of. Never mind. Blagojevich is a different kind of imbecile altogether.
Yeah, what's that
Eh,
guy's name? He's a podcaster.
Chernovich,
What?
Chernovich,
Chernovich.
yeah,
Chernovich, Jack Posobiec.
Posovich. By
When,
the way,
when,
the two of them with Croat names, I used to call them the Ustachis.
okay, so when Trump became president, it was a given that all these people would be unhappy. Like the next day, beginning the next day, they would be unhappy, and this is why I never listened to Candace Owens. I was impressed with her ability to think on her feet and respond. But if Candace Owens is a flat earther, then she has nothing to say about anything that I want to hear. I mean, it's
No,
just ridiculous. I didn't even know that flat earthism was a real thing until probably a year ago when I saw that really people actually believe this. I always thought the term a flat earther was uh, uh,
and
uh, it
yeah,
was
a
an
pejorative.
allegorical term that you use to describe
No,
somebody who didn't think clearly.
no, they actually exist, and of course, the lunar landings never happened. Uh,
Yeah,
it was all faked, and there is no space station.
I
From
mean,
my house
okay.
in Virginia, you can see the fucking thing with your naked eye, but it doesn't exist.
Well, see, all the claims that the lunar landing never happened, there's multiple long form videos debunking them. the claim, for example, that you know, oh, you can't see any stars from the moon, you know, so obviously they were just in front of a black backdrop. Well, it all has to do with the brightness of the light. That you know the okay, this newly bright screen that I have, it makes my photos that I worked on look completely different. And things that were visible when the screen was darker are no longer visible because of the brightness. And it's the same thing
Right.
that if you're standing on the moon with the light from the sun blasting over you, and you take a picture of the sky, you're going to see nothing but blackness because of the lens of the
The
camera.
amount of light.
Pick up those little faint stars up there.
Yeah.
Um, and
Go into any well lit urban environment and see what happens, you stupid ass.
well, also, okay, the it's impossible to duplicate the movement of the astronauts. If you take somebody and you have them just run and jump, and then you slow it down, it doesn't look anything like the movement of the astronauts. You could possibly do it with cables and then
Yeah.
computer generate out the cables, but they're talking about film that was faked in 1969. In 1969, there were not computer generated imagery that you could use to erase whatever cables you used
Yeah,
to
but
dangle
why,
the
why,
astronauts from.
why even waste time debunking this? It's so ridiculous on its face. It's so stupid. When people tell me that dinosaur bones were placed by X, the Jews, the devil, uh, whatever you want to say, to fool Christians and try them to see whether they trust God or not. They're so fucking out of their minds. I don't feel like debating them. You don't need to debate every idiocy out there.
No, I mean something like that. That's just retarded. That's not even, you know, that doesn't deserve. But the claim that the moon landing was faked.
It's of that category.
Well, no, but okay. There was a movie made called Capricorn One where they faked the landing on the moon, and uh, uh, faking a landing on the moon could at least be plausible. And it's not plausible that the Jews invented that the Jews planted fossilized bones all over the planet. You know, like literally everywhere that there is Earth, you could find fossils. It's not
Yes,
plausible, but it is
the,
plausible.
the, the devil did it to taste your faith. I had people actually tell me that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that sort of thing. There's no point in debating. But if somebody makes, well, okay, 9/11 was an inside job because X Y Z.
Well,
It,
now
it
Trump is going to declassify the documents, and we're going to find out that Building 7 was a controlled demolition. And you have even apparently intelligent people repeating this idiocy.
well, I mean, I think it's I think it's good to have ammunition to throw at certain conspiracy theorists. Just like, okay, Building 7. The only way that you can make the case that Building 7 was a controlled demolition is to lie about it. I mean, that's all there is to it. Are you
Of course.
leaving?
No, no, no. I'm going to get a book over there. 1 second.
Okay. Yeah. Building 7 was filled with flammable items that burned and softened. The Building 7 was made of the same construction methods as the Twin Towers, and the supports for the metal supports for the floors softened, and the whole thing went down. And
I lived for many years 4 blocks from the towers. I spent a good deal of my life in all of them. Nobody talks about the Vista Hotel, which was in Building 7, by the way. I used to stay at the Vista Hotel after I moved away. The question is not why did it fail, is how could it not?
Well, given the damage to the building, the fact that okay, again, what's that? Yeah. No, it's already been released. All the information has been released.
This was released 24 years ago.
Yeah, I have a copy.
24 years ago. All of the canards about 9/11 from the Saudis taking people out when nobody could fly to Building 7, they're all dealt with in depth with evidence up the kazoo. This is not even a fucking question.
Yeah,
Now,
and
of course, this is all lies because
well,
only in America can you have 20,000 people work on a project, falsify all the results, and not one of them is going to squeal.
well, that's the thing. I call it the Snowden test. Edward Snowden is not even a high school graduate, and he went to work for a contractor and got into the National Security Agency, and within 3 months he'd stolen some of their most important intelligence. And
Yes.
you're telling me that there wasn't a single Edward Snowden who got the real story from 9/11. There wasn't there wasn't an Edward Snowden who got the real story from the Kennedy assassination. All of those conspiracies are airtight, and it's the thing about a conspiracy is that, okay, for example, the CIA in one of its big brain moves decided they were going to hire the mafia to assassinate Fidel Castro. So they had this go-between guy who was an ex-FBI agent, and he was one of 8 top CIA leaders who knew about this plot. And when they were speaking to the director, they didn't use the word assassination. They used euphemisms. And so there were 8 people who knew about this. This idiot, he recruited Sam Giancana and Santos Trafficante, who were the two most, they had the biggest public profile of any mafiosos in the
No,
country.
it's like hiring Scarface.
Exactly. And within a matter of weeks, the press knew about this. And of course, the CIA didn't say anything for years, but this former FBI agent who was the go-between, he went to Giancana and Santos Trafficante and said, hey, can we hire you guys to kill Castro? And they thought he was off his rocker. 606 current viewers on all platforms. Okay, thank you. What was I going to say?
You were talking about the hiring of Trafficante, and within a couple of weeks,
they thought
everybody knew.
the CIA was insane, but they saw they were going to get paid a hell of a lot of money to do this, so they said, okay, sure. And then, of course, people in the CIA blathered to their lovers or their buddies or their whatever, and Trafficante and Giancana blathered, and within a matter of weeks, the press knew about it. And it took years for the CIA to admit to it, but it was 8 guys knew that the 8 highest ranking guys in the CIA were the only people who knew about it initially. And within a matter of weeks, it was already out. So, don't tell me that the moon landing and the JFK assassination, 9/11, all these are absolutely airtight conspiracy.
In this country, an adaptation of an old thing on business associations. Uh, to keep a secret, you need an odd number of people, and three are too many. Remember that one?
Well, to keep a secret, you have to kill everybody.
Well,
You have to
well,
tell them,
that's
and
the
then you
thing.
have to immediately kill them.
Yeah, and then you have to kill yourself because in this country, even when the secret is held by one person, eventually that person feels the need to squeal because there is a book contract, like the fucking asshole Deep Throat, who turned out to be a deputy director of the FBI,
Yeah.
uh, who helped a couple of ink sheeters manufacture a case against the president of the United States, and essentially that was the first successful coup d'état in the history of this country. What they did to Nixon.
Okay. Trump, whenever in the first Trump term, Trump ordered uncountable clandestine operations that were carried out by the U.S. Army Delta Force. Why the Delta Force? Because they're not the Navy SEALs who immediately start telling everybody about what they did and then write books
And
about
writing books. Yeah.
it. Yep.
And the thing is that in this case of the Pentagon Papers and Deep Throat, the only person on the planet who knew the identity of Deep Throat was Deep Throat.
Exactly.
The shysters from the Washington Compost did not know it. The editors did not know it. The only one was Deep Throat. And at one point, Deep Throat decided to cash in and he outed himself.
Yeah.
There is, you know, why we don't know where the hell, uh, 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 I don't know, this fucking idiot from the Teamsters, um,
Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa. You know why we don't know where Jimmy Hoffa is?
What's your reason?
Anybody who had any idea was killed.
Oh,
Nobody
easily.
survived who could tell the tale.
Well, easily. Whoever killed Jimmy Hoffa was killed by somebody who didn't know why they were killing Jimmy Hoffa's killers. Jimmy Hoffa was killed. Whoever killed Jimmy Hoffa was then killed by somebody who was given the order, go kill this guy. And he didn't say why.
Who didn't know why, right?
So, no. And okay, another thing, there's 250 guys out there saying, I know who killed Jimmy Hoffa. There was a book called The Irishman that Martin Scorsese made into a 3-hour movie, or 3.5 hours.
Only Scorsese.
The FBI told Scorsese or De Niro, this Irishman guy who confessed to all this, he was the biggest liar who ever lived. He wasn't even a hitman. He made it all up. And of course, by that time, they were way too late in making the movie. So they just kind of went, well, we'll go with it anyway. But what they don't tell you in The Irishman is the guy who claims that he killed Jimmy Hoffa, he also claims he's the guy who bought the rifles that killed Kennedy. And he did this and he did that. And he was a fraud.
And he's the one who was on the moon filming Neil Armstrong when he landed.
Well, the whole thing is just really. There was another guy. He was known as the Iceman. The Iceman was a hitman, and he went to prison after he's killed 128 people for the mafia. There's no evidence that he killed a single person. He was arrested for he was arrested for a single murder, but it was like a prostitute, and then he did all these interviews, and they made a movie about it and everything. But he said he was a contract killer for the mafia. The mafia doesn't use contract killers. They send one of their own people to do the killing. They don't hire some Polish American outsider.
You do it in house and you do it within the family.
Exactly. And you know, but people love this stuff. They believe it. We're in an era now where people, the way to make somebody believe something is to simply tell them. Um,
Mm.
they'll believe it. You tell them, and they'll believe it.
And they'll believe anything. Now there is the new one going around with Virginia Giuffre. Today, I was in a couple of meetings at the SAR and then at the Scottish Rite, and people were, "Do you know anything about this?" I said, "Yeah, the poor girl offed herself." Uh,
Well,
Already, the police started an investigation immediately. There is no, they consider in British tradition, they won't tell you much except that whether it is suspicious or not. It, they deem it not suspicious.
well,
Um,
her family said she committed suicide.
Her family said she committed suicide. The police said, there are no suspicious circumstances surrounding this suicide. Apparently, her kidneys stopped functioning, and she had nothing but a very gruesome death ahead of her. And she decided that she had enough. And
Well, tell everyone who you're talking about. Just make sure they know.
Virginia Giuffre is a woman, 41 years now, who was a teenager, 16, 17, when Ghislaine Maxwell recruited her for the sexual pleasure of Epstein, who in turn, she claimed, trafficked her around his friends, including Prince Andrew. And she also made some claims that were uh, quite unbelievable and were proven to be false. She claimed that she had been trafficked to Alan Dershowitz, um, but the dates she gave, Alan Dershowitz was someplace else, uh, provable.
Also, he
Uh,
came out swinging. He
oh,
didn't say no comment. He came out swinging.
he came out swinging, and that's how we know that all of her information was false, as it regarded uh, Dershowitz. She also made some claims about Prince Andrew, and that we'll never know because Prince Andrew settled with her out of court, and probably, that is something that people do in order to keep their privacy, whether guilty or innocent. It's cheaper to pay the bitch to go away. And of course, those are sealed because you don't want to give other bitches the roadmap. So she may have been a victim. Uh, I think she was to a large extent.
There's photos of her as a 16-year-old with
Yeah, standing
standing
standing with Prince Andrew.
at least standing next to Prince Andrew,
Yes,
wearing
and
a very revealing outfit.
no, no, the outfit is not too revealing. It's a classic blouse of the times. I believe she was a victim of Epstein's and Maxwell's. Um, the rest, I don't know. I may believe more or less of the story, uh, but whatever she had to say, she already did. If somebody was trying to kill her to silence her, they're like 10 years too fucking late.
Well, I mean, people don't even pay attention to what they say. Like Candace Owens claims that she's not allowed to criticize Jewish people, and it's like, but you criticize Jewish people all the time. What do you mean you're not allowed to? That's your bread and butter. What do you mean you're not allowed to? Or people say, they killed her to silence her, and it's like, but she already talked. What do you
She
mean?
already spilled her guts.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to kill her to silence her, she never makes it to the court. She never makes it to the press interview.
Yeah. Okay, Russia. um, you suddenly find yourself flying out of a window before you can do or say anything. And then later on, we find out, oh, well, this guy who suddenly flew out a window, he'd lost favor with Putin, but he hadn't said anything. He hadn't fled to Europe. He was gone before he could do any damage to Putin.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just, it's the weirdest thing when people say stuff that they're not even thinking about the words coming out of their own mouths.
And Yanukovych was poisoned by the Russians, but that's because they wanted him out of the Ukrainian political scene because they wanted their own stooge in there. By the way, have you noticed that nobody talks about Yanukovych and his efforts to bring Ukraine into the European Union and how his attempts to join NATO were rebuffed by NATO? And I'm talking about 2010, 2011, long before this whole shit show started.
Well, unfortunately, Ukraine has become one of those events that now it's impossible to know what's really going on. You have to wait until something happens before you know what's going on. So you're getting conflicting stories from the same people, and
yes,
it's just this is why I'm not paying. I used to watch this channel, and then I used to watch several channels about the Ukraine war. I haven't watched for months because they all went after as soon as Trump won, they all went crazy.
Oh God, they all went crazy. They all take the American press at its word. And all of a sudden they're saying a lot of shit. But we have idiots like that on our side too.
Oh, of course.
I have a little video for you. It is in Russian with English subtitles, which I suppose is going to make it a lot easier to understand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there we go. This is for those people on the false right in America who do nothing but repeat Russian propaganda like they are an outfit of Izvestia or Sputnik. This is Vladimir Putin in 2008 responding to questions that people were worried about Russia's designs on Ukraine and Crimea. 2008. Remember, the invasion of Crimea was 14.
Mm-hmm.
Французский министр иностранных дел, председатель ЕС господин Кушнер выразил недавно озабоченность, что следующим конфликтом может быть Украина, а именно Крым и Севастополь как база российского военно-морского флота. Является ли Крым и Севастополь такой целью для России?
Вы сказали следующей целью. У нас не было и здесь никакой цели. Поэтому считаю, говорить о какой-то следующей цели некорректно. Это первое.
Вы это исключаете?
Если вы мне позволите ответить, то вы будете удовлетворены. Значит, Крым не является никакой спорной территорией. Там не было никакого этнического конфликта, в отличие от конфликта между Южной Осетией и Грузией. И Россия давно признала границы сегодняшней Украины. Мы, по сути, закончили в целом и в общем наши переговоры по границе. Речь идет о демаркации, но это же технические дела. Вопрос о каких-то подобных целях для России, считаю, отдает провокационным смыслом.
Okay. So, in 2008, Putin recognized the borders of Ukraine. There was no dispute about Crimea being Ukrainian. And how dare you even suggest that we may have a target there? Where is this thing that Putin invaded? Because there were ethnic Russians under threat, when he says in this video there are no ethnic populations that we have to worry about.
Well, obviously, what we just saw is Putin lying his ass off. Of course, he had every what do you call it?
Every intention, even then.
Every
By the way,
intention of invading.
while he's doing this, he's preparing a coup in Ukraine to ensure that Ukraine stays within the Russian orbit.
No,
That's what was going on in the background. And
well,
he did. The Orange Revolution was not a coup, was the response to the coup.
well, yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, it hurts me when I think of all the idiocies I have to listen to.
But see, the people who claim to be on our side, who find that Putin is blameless, they keep changing. They keep moving the goalposts. You know, first they started out by saying that Russia only invaded Ukraine because of NATO encroachment to the east, and basically what they were saying is that they supported invading a completely different country and planting your flag there to create a region, a puppet region that you know you would use as a buffer zone against your opponent. But then they changed the argument, and you're now hearing people saying that basically the Russians have always had a right to Ukraine, that Ukraine is simply a part of Russia, and we have absolutely no reason to be involved because this is just Russia reclaiming what's hers. That Ukraine is a fake country that we created, and it's just one of these things where you start out with your position that you're going to support Russia no matter what, and then you try and figure out different reasons for supporting Russia.
And of course, those different reasons are whatever the Russian propaganda spews this day.
Yeah, and you hear Trump says this isn't our war, and we're going to stop this, stop that. And then you hear also that the Ukrainians are going to buy a whole shitload of Patriot missiles.
Yeah.
After
or you have Putin and Trump sitting one-on-one with the corpse of the Pope right there.
Yeah.
By the way, there was a wonderful scene. It's actually on film. Trump and Zelensky move apart from the crowd to sit down in a couple of chairs face to face, to talk without intermediaries, without vice presidents or secretaries of defense or any kind of interruption. And as they are going to sit, Macron pulls up a chair to sit with them. Have you ever seen a Frenchman try to walk with a chair lodged between his ass cheeks?
Well, he certainly didn't end up sitting with them.
No, they told him in obviously unequivocal terms, get the fuck out, you frog. This is between him and me.
Well, and after that conversation, Zelensky said it was historic.
Oh, he was beaming. I don't know what the fuck Trump told him. But Zelensky was saying, we're going to have a ceasefire and we're going to have a lasting peace. and this is a historic moment. Whatever the fuck Trump told him, Zelensky was very happy.
Well, see, the Russians are like the Chinese. The Russians say all this shit the way the Chinese did, and then Xi calls Trump and says, "I'm ready to make a deal." You know?
Of course he is.
Yeah.
Remember that we've said from the beginning, he's starting a war he cannot win.
Yeah.
He's going to come in. I think the phrase that I used is with a hat in one hand and the other hand up his ass, asking for forgiveness. And that's what he did.
Well, I saw something interesting. For some reason, I got really interested in Pol Pot this weekend, or this past week. So I watched a lot of documentaries about Pol Pot. And the Khmer Rouge moved all these forces to the Vietnamese Cambodian border, and they were launching all these raids into Vietnam.
Yep.
And the Vietnamese finally said, okay, enough. And they invaded with, I think, a huge number, tens of thousands of troops into Cambodia.
Yes.
And that's when the Chinese attacked Vietnam in order to take the pressure off the Khmer Rouge. And the Vietnamese defeated the Khmer Rouge and the Chinese simultaneously. And the Chinese lost 30,000 dead in 3 weeks. And, they made a terrible, terrible blunder by taking on people who'd basically been fighting for the last 25 years.
Or
more. And we're seeing them do it all again. It's like, she was out of his mind. And he's had to come crawling to Trump. And, Trump isn't going to publicly force Putin to come crawling to him, but it's going to have to happen because
he's already saying what we anticipated. He's already saying that he doesn't think now that Putin is negotiating in good faith.
Yeah.
He doesn't think that Putin wants peace. He's already telegraphing his displeasure.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's not saying, we're going to side with Ukraine, because to be a believable intermediary in a peace conference, you cannot do that.
And
he's already announcing to Putin, I'm not going to take any more of this shit.
Yeah. And a sizable percentage of Trump's base has an irrational hatred of Zelensky, and you and I know why.
Because he's a Jew.
Yeah. And
but by the way, I'm Israel high, motherfuckers. I wanted to say that again.
Yeah, it's it's really amazing what the world, what the press has decided that they're going to just start lying, in completely unbelievable ways about Trump. But if you've noticed, the press isn't reporting on Israel anymore. And
no,
Israel hasn't stopped. Israel,
it's relentless.
It's relentless. But the press has realized that they can't force the Israelis to stop. And there's no such thing as world pressure anymore.
No.
We forced the Israelis to stop both in 2006, 2000. Well, basically, we always forced them to stop before they defeated their enemies. And
always,
even in 2006,
even in 73,
Condoleezza Rice told the Israelis destroy Hezbollah. But all Hezbollah had to do was produce a frozen dead baby with a blue pacifier, and then Condoleezza said, "Okay, all bets are off." I had no idea that babies were going to die, and so the Israelis had to stop. But Trump hates war so much that he's willing to fight it in order to prevent worse wars in the future.
Let's clarify this. I know that you and I agree on this one, or at least I think I do. But let me clarify for everybody there. It is the stupidest of fallacies. I'm against war, so am I, so are you, so is everybody. Because unless you are completely off your fucking rocker, nobody likes war. Everybody hates war. Nobody wants war. Even aggressive sons of bitches like Putin want to get away with it without actually going to war.
Absolutely. That's what he thought was going to happen in Ukraine.
That's exactly what he thought was going. He thought he was going to take Kyiv in 3 days and reset Ukraine to his image and semblance, and that was the end of it. Nobody wants war. That said, there are some times when war is either inevitable or the least evil available. In which case, you do it effectively. You do it, if possible, with overwhelming force to win quickly and get out of there. What a lot of these pseudo peaceniks advocate for is war, death, and suffering on an unnecessary scale. Had we intervened when we needed to intervene in 2014, 2 million people would be alive today. Had we intervened in Syria when we needed to intervene, 600,000 Syrians would not have been killed by a murderous regime. Sometimes, and you say, and why we? There are 2 reasons for that. First, because we can. Second, because our national security and our economy are very much dependent on trade through these particular routes. It's not a question of love of mankind, because otherwise there are too many conflicts in the world and we're not going to interfere in all of them. And what the Congo government is doing with the Bushmen is none of our beeswax.
Well, Orwell said that the majority of Western pacifists oppose war only in defense of Western democracies, and that's true. And the attacks, the alleged support of the Palestinians is actually support of Hamas. And now that Hamas, everybody, even even Americans who went out and marched in support of Gazans, they know that Hamas is dead, and so they've switched over to attacking Elon Musk. And they've proven that they don't actually give a shit about the Gazans. They
never did.
They didn't say a word when Hamas began opening fire on the protesters in Gaza. There was no complaint about that. When Hamas started delivering the dismembered bodies of protesters to their families, they didn't say a word. So it's like BLM. It's not that Black Lives Matter, that Black criminals killed by white police matter. Not even
that. You know what matters for Black Lives Matters?
Money.
Government funding, so that the if funders can buy $6 billion houses in fucking California.
Mhm. No,
The-
and
the- there is no ideology. Yeah, I'm a formed communist, whatever the fuck that means.
well,
I think that bitch said I am a trained communist,
yeah, whatever. I mean, they're making
whatever that
they're making a huge mistake
is.
backing up this 17-year-old track star who knifed to death the other kid. They're going to try and make it a self-defense argument. This is Texas. You know, he's doomed. The self, as liberal as self-defense laws are in Texas, they don't cover what this kid did.
By the way, in case the Texans do what they need to do, I here officially offer my services free of charge to pull the switch, pull the lever, or fire the gun, as the case may be. And I'll do it for free. Because when I there are times where I have doubts about the death penalty. And there are times where nothing less will do.
Well,
The facts in this case are not in dispute.
yeah, I have no opinion on the death penalty. I can accept either the death penalty or life in prison without parole. I do oppose.
And they will pay for the settlement.
I do oppose parole for first degree premeditated homicide or capital homicide.
Like the Menendez brothers.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if the Menendez brothers have you know seen the light or whatever, that's great. But they were sentenced to life without parole, and they were old enough to know that they were gambling with something like that when they murdered their parents. And whether or not their parents did sexually assault them
is irrelevant.
Well, it doesn't really play into the fact that we're talking about the legal system. You committed this particular crime, and this was the particular punishment that you knew you were facing before you committed the crime. And
or Luigi Mangione says somebody in the chat. Deb, Luigi Mangione is the same thing. The guy is essentially followed, hunted an executive who was, by all accounts, a fairly decent man with a wife and 2 kids, and killed them with one shot to the back of the head, as a coward he is, and deprived the kids of their parents, his parents of their son, the wife of her husband.
Well, also in that guy's case, initially, everybody who knew him said he had no health issues himself. And then once he got lawyers, they started saying, oh, he suffers from chronic back pain, and the health insurance industry wasn't helping him. So he did it. I saw pictures of him, you know, shirtless at canyons and everything. And it's like, really? This guy has chronic back pain? Huh. Doesn't look like it. But
no. And even if he did, so what?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Like, either you want we can be Somalia if that's what everybody wants, where there's literally no rule of law, and you know, people are murdering each other left and right over.
Well, that's what the left wants, because, and oh God, we were discussing this in writing on Twitter 6 years ago, 7 years ago. They are using the Algeria strategy on us.
Mm-hmm.
These people, these judges, these district attorneys, are protecting and releasing the worst criminals amongst us, so that our streets become unsafe, We fear for our lives, and we're willing to support anybody who brings a solution.
Yeah.
And it is proven time and again that people who are scared shitless of walking to the street corner of their homes are going to be more than willing to give up their freedoms in exchange for security.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to do, because there is no explanation to the passion with which the Newsoms of this world or the uh, Alvin Braggs or the Judge Dugans release murderers, rapists. When they don't have any more to release, they import them from Mexican, Salvadoran, Guatemalan, and Venezuelan cartels. When those are not enough, they bring them from Hezbollah and ISIS and bands from Afghanistan, the names of which we don't even know yet. And the more mayhem and the more scared people are, the better. And this is done by design. I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in happenstance.
Well, see, it's really interesting because rationally, the answer of the Algerian government that essentially supported the armed Islamic group, which was, I mean, these guys made the Islamic State look like Boy Scouts.
Yep.
The Algerians responded with essentially a police state. And what the Democrats are doing is they're still all about abolishing the police and prisons, but you still have the criminals. So it's the weirdest approach to all of this, because if they were offering massive law and order,
that comes afterwards.
Well,
first we need chaos. You see, Americans are these pesky people who don't want national IDs because they don't want their biometrics in some government as if it wasn't there already, but they don't want that. They want their ability to speak their minds. They want to use social media without censorship. They want to be able to move freely, not only in their towns, but across the country without interference. They want all of these freedoms.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to defend themselves from anybody who tries to tell them how to live, what to eat, how warm or hot their thermostat should be, whether they should use gasoline or electric cars, the things that fascist governments love to do. And they're not giving up, and they're not following, and they're resisting. So how do you get the American people to be more compliant? Chaos. Chaos. When everybody is fearful that they will be knifed if they go to the supermarket, that their wife or daughter will be raped and decapitated, that they're going to go to a movie theater and it's going to blow up sky high because a goat fucker from Afghanistan was imported under his side or behind his back. And then and only then, the Democrats offer a safe, secure state. And by the way, let's use the military now because we're not Republicans. And the American people, if they are desperate enough, might react like everybody else and say, please do. I want to be able to sleep.
Well, it's really interesting because I think today's Democrats are so gone that I think they would still continue with the anti-police shit, even when you know the populace is begging for law and order. And I think the Democrats have completely lost their marbles. I hear claims that there isn't a Democrat civil war going on right now, but you can see for yourself. You know, the Democrats are going to go even further to the left, and they're going to be run by leftist nitwit women like Ocasio-Cortez and Jasmine Crockett. And
Please, Lord, we beg you.
well, this is the thing that you know, basically, I don't know. It's quite amazing to see, because everything that the press tries, it fails within about a week and a half, and then they move on to something else. And okay, remember the Pete Hegseth, whatever it was, the
signal gate. Oh
Yeah.
my God, he chatted with his wife on a private line.
Yeah.
Ah!
Nobody cared. Now, okay, they're fighting the oligarchy, except they pronounce it oligarchy. And there's people out there saying, there's like leftist actors talking to reporters and politicians saying, why are you doing this? Nobody gives a shit.
No, wait, what oligarchy?
What?
What oligarchy?
Well, it's not something that resonates with the average American.
Of course not. If we had an oligarchy like the Russians do, then it might be. But frankly, the Silicon Valley barons are not an oligarchy.
No.
They are despicable, most of them. They are stupid, all of them. But an oligarchy, they are not. We don't have a couple of thousand people who control every lever of government.
No.
We don't. That's what an oligarchy is, the government of the few. If anything, we have too many in government. Which, by the way, I'll take over an oligarchy any day. But we don't have an oligarchy. They tried the class struggle. It didn't work. Their idea of replacing class struggle with whatever you wanted to be this weak struggle, you know, cis versus trans, men versus women, not quite so men versus not women at all. That didn't work either. So now the same imbeciles who've been going from the struggle between the proletariat and the capital and passed through the struggle between, I don't know, restaurant owners and trans people are now arriving to the struggle against the oligarchy, which 90% of Americans wouldn't know even if they have a dictionary at home. But look at that. Look at who's doing it. Bernie freaking Sanders.
Sure.
And the bartender.
Yep.
I mean, please, let them be the candidates next time. I would like even better, you know, like the bartender and the Hamas terrorist. That would be great. That would be great. It would guarantee that the Democratic Party is finished.
Well, this is the thing that okay, Ocasio-Cortez, she doesn't have a platform. She's not running.
Doesn't have a brain.
Well, she's not running on anything, and the Democrats, I saw some quote from some woman saying we have to get rid of this notion of us being weak and crazy, and we have to come up with something. And it's like, well, that's politics 101. And okay, this they're trying to get young men to come back to the party. And as long as the party's run by harridan women, it's not going to happen.
I don't see many young men in this country
No,
who are not completely off the rockers, who would follow the likes of the bartender Rashida Tlaib, um, Jayarpal Presley. I mean, come on. If anything, any full-blooded American man ought to be running in the opposite direction. The the paroxysm of a put off. So no, it's not going to happen. It's definitely not going to happen. Talk about it would definitely if you put them every day on TV, you're going to see the fertility rate drop to 0.5.
well, being here in California, there's a lot of types of people you don't see, and the types of people you do see, okay, they're making a lot of like Netflix movies and these smaller budget movies about California and how wonderful California is. And it's like, for those of us who live here, okay, the mayor is announced. Los Angeles is like massively in the red.
You mean the Karen?
Yes, the city is massively in the red, so they're starting to like lay off huge numbers of people, including they're going to lay off about 400 cops, and it's like,
oh, they start with the cops.
What?
They don't start with the parasites in the city offices. They start with the cops.
No, they're laying off cops, social workers, let's see, people who work in the medical industry, the state-sponsored medical industry, just basically all the people they're laying off are going to have a direct impact on the quality of life of the California voters.
That's what they're doing it this way. I mean, come on. If it was you or me, we wouldn't be laying off cops or nurses or doctors until we had 0 social workers left.
Well,
and when you're done with the social workers, you start with other like parasites that do nothing. About half the people in the DMV, for instance. And it would be a long time before you accept people, before you affect people's health and security. But that's where they start.
Mm-hmm.
Because they want people to feel uncomfortable and demand a fix. It's not unlike Obama spending money to close the national parks. I mean, supposedly the government is shut down and he doesn't have any money and he doesn't have any funds. And he spends funds he never spent, no government spent before, in order to close the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial, the World War II Memorial. The only reason is to inflict pain upon people visiting the memorials, so that they scream against the Republicans for cutting off funding, and they don't realize that closing the monuments cost money, and that the monuments otherwise are never closed. You can go to these monuments anytime, day or night.
Well, also, I mean, the Lincoln Memorial, it's an open building. Like
Precisely.
to barricade people from going there, you're going to have to hire people to stand in front of it and say you can't come in here.
I've been to the Lincoln Memorial a gazillion times. One thing that I used to like to do back in the day was trade the views of the mall and the Capitol at night with the lights, and then go around the building and look at the Kennedy flame in Arlington. And I've done this a gazillion times. At most, you had one guy from the Parks Service,
Mm.
just in case somebody tripped on the stairs. Uh, and that was it. And that was it. Or just in case some idiot decided to get red paint and start painting Lincoln so he can call the cops. When Obama closed this, they had to bring in barricades. They had to man the barricades with a shit ton of personnel and cops that usually are not there. When I say he spent money that usually would not be spent in order to pretend it was closed for lack of money, it would be Machiavellian if it weren't so stupid.
Well, speaking about inevitable things, Obama has lost all his influence. Like we're not going to see Obama being a kingmaker in the next elections.
No, you mean we're not going to have President Michael Obama either?
No, I mean she's not interested, and Ocasio-Cortez isn't going to listen to a word he says. No, I mean the Democratic strategists and donors are hysterical with terror because of the direction that the party's going. That it's going toward young female rabid leftists like Ocasio-Cortez, and you can't win a general election with that person as your face.
They just got fucked because they elected to direct the party a young female crazy character, David Hogg.
Mm-hmm.
He's a young female too.
Well, he's also trying to primary all the Democrats in safe seats, and he's being told you're risking what was a safe seat. You're going to put in.
Is he going to try to primary Fetterman?
Everybody, because and okay, David Hogg, everything has gone to his head. Hogg was a fraud. Hogg claimed that he was at the school during the shooting, and he wasn't. He was not on the grounds. He was not in any physical danger.
He wasn't even in school. He was home.
Yeah, and he had been trying for years to present himself as one of the sanctified victims by making videos where he would provoke the police and all of that. And so he finally found it in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas school shooting. And so they for whatever reason,
incidentally by another fucking
one of the co-chairs of the Democratic National Party, and now there's talk of removing him because he won't listen and he's delusional.
Yeah. And the shooting at the school was carried out by another rabid fucking leftist. Because they're making it sound like it was a deranged fucking leftist with a Che Guevara shirt.
Sure.
We don't hear that. But I'm supposed to fear ultra-right organizations.
Well, the Democrats under Obama and Biden directed all all the counterterrorism in this country was done toward suppressing a threat from white supremacists that doesn't exist. I mean, Nick Fuentes is one of 350 American Nazis, and he's not even an official member of the Nazi party. Even he is not that stupid.
No, he's as Nazi as Candace Owens, as we were talking about.
Well, she's in love with him, so
There you go.
he's constantly defending him. And that's who we need on our side, right, Candace? Is a Mexican Nazi.
It's a weird, but this is part of the unraveling that we're talking about. All of this shit is coming loose. I mean, we always know they had a screw loose, but now they're coming loose at the hinges.
Yeah.
All of these, if they get to the point that they have the bartender as a candidate for anything other than dog catcher, we are going to see the absolute end of it, and they're marching towards it, eyes wide open, with goose steps and Chinese light displays in the skies. I don't see that they realize, except for, like you said, some old hands. I think Carville is about to be institutionalized because of this. It's driving him none than he ever was. But all of this is the consequence of nothing working for them anymore.
Well, Carville himself did this famous video where it was the beginning of his dropping the F-bomb all the time, where he was raving about how nothing worked against Trump, that everything they tried simply didn't work, and that he was out of ideas because nothing was bringing Trump's poll numbers down, and you know, Trump was well on his way to winning the election, and he'd run out of ideas on how to stop him.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what does that tell you, Jim? It tells you that the product you're selling, nobody wants to buy. It has less to do with Trump than it does with, you know, what you're trying to sell the American people.
They're gone. They're gone. Look at how much they've been trying for the past 100 days to relit the spirit of 2020.
Yeah.
And I can think right now of at least 20 instances. They're doing everything from lawfare to try to find the racist complaint. You know, in the case of a black guy knifing a guy that was pretty much in his tent and represented no danger to him. And it's not working, and nobody gives a shit. Right now, they, you know, ICE and not only ICE, the government has canceled a shit ton of student visas.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing is happening. You know, yeah, they're still doing their little Palestine shtick in Harvard or in Columbia, but there's less and less of them. There will be a hell of a lot less once the deportations actually occur. Because when they cancel the student visa, they have some time to leave the country. And that's gonna be it. And when they call for protests against Trump, everybody's on a fucking walker.
Yeah, there was supposed to be There's supposed to be nationwide protests over the Easter weekend. I didn't see anything.
Yeah, on Easter Sunday. They all went
I
to
didn't,
egg hunts, didn't give a shit. Now we're supposed to have another one on May 1st, May Day, the communist holiday. And these people call for a protest against Trump on the communist holiday. I mean,
yeah.
can they be more stupid? Can
Well,
they
that's the
really
thing.
be more stupid?
There's a lot of people who oppose Trump, but who aren't communists, who aren't going to show up because they don't want to be, you know.
They're not going to be
Today,
protesting the government on May 1st, you idiot.
today it was announced that the government is going to start collecting on student loan debt. And
Yes.
somebody played all these TikTok videos of college graduates, and I have never seen a more mush-mouthed, absolutely incoherent group of people. It's like just these weirdos squawking. There was one idiot claiming that the Department of Education wasn't part of the federal government. You Google it, you'll see that it's not part of the federal government.
Not
And it was just like, okay, but I don't know. It was just really eerie. I mean, these are the most.
To be frank, these people ought to get a refund from the universities.
Well, that's the thing, that it's not their fault that they're idiots. They were not taught anything while they went to their universities.
No, and they were accepted back, even though we all know they were idiots already.
Yeah.
But let me put it from a humanitarian standpoint, because these retards are not really responsible for their actions, but the universities who exploited them in order to get a hand on their tuition are.
Yeah.
So don't pardon the debt, force the universities to repay it because they failed miserably at providing what they're promised. It's a defective product.
Yeah, and the universities are basically acting like predatory loan makers. They're scooping people up and telling them that their degree is going to make sure that they have like this golden pathway into a brilliant, well-paying future, and then they get out of college, they find out that their degree is absolutely worthless, and they'll be lucky if they can get a job at McDonald's.
I wouldn't have hired them to do the dishes in my restaurant, but screw them. They are going to pay now. There's not going to be any more delays. Yeah, there might be a judge that comes out with a temporary restrictive order and all that, but this is eventually going to come to the Supreme Court, and
Sure.
those restraining orders are going to be restrained.
Oh yeah.
And judges may be able to issue a restraining order affecting their district and no further. I think that's where the Supreme Court is going to go. And it might be a 5-4, or a 6 or a 6-3, but it's going to be. So they won't be able to do this for much longer. The notion that the Article 3 courts can tell the Article 2 executive how far they can go in foreign relations or in handling their own personnel matters is absurd. It's cretinous. And it's not going to stand. I am very optimistic. And this has to happen, and this was expected.
Yeah. That's what the Trump administration is saying. They expected all this, and they're ready for it.
And we discussed it too. Of course, this was going to happen. Of course, they're going to defend themselves. Of course, they're going to try to defend their funding. How are they going to buy absentee ballots a year from now if they don't have funds? Of course, they want to defend the opportunity to create propaganda against the government with the government's own money. But PBS is going to have to find private funding.
And that's not going to happen because leftists don't give.
No, but they buy. Remember that leftists are pretty good at buying media, far more than conservatives, who are notoriously stupid when it comes to this. But in any case, they're not going to do it on our dime anymore. They're going to have to find their own money for it. Another bit of good news this week. I was protesting. I had a tweet that went viral about 10 days ago, protesting the fact that Susan Rice was in an advisory council in the Department of Defense.
Wow.
And I published the Department of Defense webpage with the information on this particular council, and Susan Rice among the members. I said, what the fuck is this woman still doing here? Yesterday she was fired.
Wow.
I wonder if she's going to try to get workman's comp or sue for wrongful termination. Anything I can expect from these people now.
She turned out to be much stupider than I thought she was.
Oh, she was. When I saw her on that infamous Sunday doing the run, you know, the spontaneous demonstration run, at that moment I said, this woman is an idiot. Not only because she accepted to be the what do you call it?
The fall girl.
The fall girl. I was going to say chivo expiatorio, the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah.
And not only because she accepted to be the sacrificial lamb in the most ridiculous manner, although I believe that she would have sucked Obama to death if he liked women, and would have done anything he asked of her. But her arguments while doing so were those of a 4-year-old. She's nothing but a mean idiot.
Well, I remember, you know, when Grinnell was appointed as head of or as he was appointed as a director of national intelligence, that she issued this statement saying he was the most incompetent public servant to ever exist in the history of the planet. It was just like baby cakes. That's so off the mark that it automatically makes people disbelieve you. Like, all you have to do is listen to Richard Grinnell speak for 15 seconds and you know that he's, you know, an order of magnitude more competent than Susan Rice herself is.
I don't know. She is not mentally or intellectually qualified to speak about Grinnell.
No.
She is the classic Howard University graduate. An imbecile with smoke between her ears and a false sense of superiority. She thinks herself a genius, yet she's an idiot. And if you look at all of the graduates from Howard University that the Democrats have put in positions in Congress, in the courts, in the executive, you're going to find a striking parallelism. They're all arrogant imbeciles. Maybe that's all they teach in Howard, how to be an arrogant imbecile. But that's the only thing they know how to do. And
Well, I was just going to say, look at all the judges and activists who are being arrested. The ones who are damaging Tesla dealerships or whatever. These people are all physical freaks. I mean, they're just, you look at them and you say, there's something deeply wrong with this person. And like, okay, you see, like, mugshots. There was this 20-year-old who was arrested for assaulting an 11-year-old at a park. The 20-year-old woman got into a fist fight with an 11-year-old girl. And the mugshot looked like a woman who was like pushing 50. It was like, she looked like a toothless hillbilly. And you look at that face and you just go, this is not someone I want anywhere near me. And you get the same vibe from all these Democrat activists and judges and politicians, and they look exactly like what they are. Like Jasmine Crockett has decided that she's going to be a fake ghetto queen, and so as she progresses, her photos get more and more horrific. She's projecting what she really wants to project, and you know, a ghetto queen isn't going to win a national election. That's all there is to it. You know,
uh, that's all there is to it. But in any case, by the way, Susan Rice lost it on an interview.
oh really?
Yeah, she called Hegseth. He said Hegseth was dumber than a sack of rocks, or something to that effect. Now Hegseth is not a saint of my devotion, but give me a fucking break. Benghazi video rise saying that anybody's dumb. It
But see, that's the
takes
go-to
courage.
that's the go-to insult of Democrats. They've always said that Republicans are dumb, and it's like, okay, you guys ran the country into the ground over the Obama administration and then the Biden administration. You made the stupidest decisions that anybody has ever made in our government's history, and you're now calling. What's the evidence that Pete Hegseth is dumb? He doesn't sound dumb when he talks. He hasn't made any massively dumb decisions. Maybe he was dumb for not knowing that Susan Rice had somehow snuck her way into this advisory position. But on the other hand, that's people like that need to be fired by underlings, not by the Secretary of Defense himself.
No, and that's another thing. Why is Hegseth running with the troops? It's called morale building, you fucking
Yeah.
idiots. Again, people don't understand what a leadership position means. The CEO of Bayer is not packing aspirin in a plant. Pam Bondi is not in court leading a case against Hillary Clinton. Pete Hegseth is not driving a logistics truck through the battlefield. They are there to build morale, to convey policy, and to make sure they have the people that can ensure it's carried out. Now, I know Democrats may not understand that, But anybody who claims to be a conservative, I thought by now would know this.
Well, that's another thing. Democrats refuse to understand conservatives, and they insist on sticking to their infantile, cartoonish views of conservatives. And this is why when you have someone like Bill Maher actually meet Trump, he's shocked that Trump didn't punch him in the face or drool or just whatever. Bill Maher believed everything he'd said about Trump, and everything he'd said about Trump was based on ideas that Bill Maher had picked up from other people. And so when he finally met Trump in person, you know, he was shocked. You get this all the time. The late Anthony Bourdain, he went out to he did a tour of the South, and he was shocked that Southerners weren't lynching black people, and that they were happy to see him and give him Southern food. You know, he couldn't believe it. And it's like, okay, Tony, you're telling us what you would have done. You're not telling us what real conservative Southerners do. You're telling us that if it were you, you would scream at them and tell them to get out of your house because of their politics.
Well, in some cases I would. No, they don't. Bill Maher was shocked. Did he learn anything? Did he change his tune? No. And I will pose to you that Bill Maher's entire relation of his dinner with Trump denotes a degree of imbecility, lack of curiosity, and intellectual deficit that is very hard to emulate. Oh my God. Trump was a civil person. What the fuck were you expecting to find Rendon's mother?
Apparently.
It's that doesn't say anything about Trump, and says everything about your own ignorance and stupidity. I guarantee you that with many of the people I say Biden, if I had been invited to Rehoboth to have dinner with Biden, I guarantee you he would have been an affable son of a bitch.
Sure, because that's what he does.
And it's an art form for these people. Bill Clinton is an asshole, a corrupt liar, cheater, rapist. But if he could talk to you in person a couple of hours, he could have fucked you too. He was disarmingly charmed. If you don't know that, what are you talking about? Did he really expect Trump to what? Bite him? Throw the dogs at him? What is it that he expected to be so surprised that the President of the United States, who has been dealing with thousands of people from around the planet in a long career in business, is anything other than charming, you idiot?
Oh, that's the thing. He is an idiot. He is an idiot. I mean, Bill Maher once said that he wanted Obama to be a real black guy and walk in the room and pound the table and pull out a switchblade. And it was like, holy shit, did you just say that? Did you honestly?
Yeah, because he's a fucking racist.
Exactly. That's what you think real black people are? Is that Clarence Thomas carries like a stiletto in his boot?
No, a switchblade.
Unbelievable.
And a Saturday night special.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
So they say, did he learn? No, he didn't learn anything. I don't buy his shtick. I don't give a shit about his newly discovered appreciation. And oh my God, if Trump could be like this everywhere, he is like this everywhere.
Yeah.
If you had ever bothered to go to one of his rallies, you would have seen the son of a gun having a dialogue with the audience and cracking up the audience and himself, making fun about the Democrats, establishing a rapport, and leaving everybody in that stadium with the impression that Trump was talking to him and only to him.
Yeah.
So he's a dodo, he's an idiot, he's a fucking imbecile, and I'm tired of him. He's also a racist, but then again, we already know he's a Democrat.
Well, this is the thing that if you're still at the point where okay, despite everything, I never thought of Obama as a black president. I thought of him as the president. All the mocking I did of Obama, it was never Obama as a black guy. It was just Obama as an idiot,
As a fascist,
as a
an
fascist,
imbecile.
as an idiot, as a fake wannabe intellectual, just everything. And it never occurred to me to like picture Obama with a switchblade. I mean, who thinks of shit like that?
Uh, was it Biden? Somebody.
Yeah, Biden said Obama was the first clean, articulate black politician.
Yeah. Interesting shit, isn't it? It's the same thing, by the way. What did, besides the obvious racism, what did he expect to find? When you say politician, are you referring to Washington T. Booker? Wasn't he articulate?
Well, who was the former slave who?
He's one of them.
What?
He's one of them. Was
Yeah,
very active during Reconstruction.
I can't remember his name, but he's publishing books and like, are you going to look at this guy and
Even assholes whose ideology I despise, like Du Bois. He was extremely articulate.
well, the whole notion of the articulate black person is kind of stupid because
Why wouldn't he be?
some of the funniest speakers of English are American black people that they have this ability. You see this a lot in videos where it's like parents telling their kids that they can't wear a certain outfit. And like the sheer brilliance of the choice of words is it's like, okay, Australians are well known for their comedic touch when it comes to speaking English, but I would argue that American blacks are at least as funny because, I mean, okay, I saw Antifa or somebody setting a fire in Washington, D.C. once. It was years ago. And there was this young guy who came over and he started putting out the fire, and he was black. And they said, what are you doing? And he said, don't be doing this wild stuff here. We don't want this. And they said, well, we're doing this for you. And he said, you're not doing this for me. You're doing this because you hate Trump. I don't like Trump either, but don't be doing this wild stuff here. And he said, where are you from? And the guy said, New Hampshire. And he said, New Hampshire, the Commonwealth would grill your ass if you did this in New Hampshire. And just that choice of term, it would never occur to me to say, the Commonwealth would grill your ass. And he wasn't trying to be funny. He was just in a heated exchange with somebody. And you get that a lot with American blacks. So this whole notion, are you saying that to be considered articulate, an American black has to sound like a college professor? Because that kid it was in DC. The kid in DC was as articulate as anyone you would ever want to be, but he was an urban guy. He was a young urban guy who didn't sound like a college professor, but he had no problem expressing what he meant. And he was funny, and his choice of words, his vocabulary was very gigantic. And that's as articulate as any college professor out there. It's just in a different way.
No, I hesitate to speak of Prince Hall, Frederick Douglass.
That's who I was thinking of, Frederick Douglass. Yeah.
Because I don't want to give importance to the idiotic racist comment of a retard. And at the time Biden said these words, he wasn't an Alzheimer's patient yet, but he's always been a retard.
Mm-hmm.
And a racist retard at that. I don't want to give it agency. I don't want to give it entity. I don't want to discuss this thing because having to defend the notion that there is really no difference between white, brown, black, yellow people in terms of being articulate or being intelligent or being able. At this point, it's not something that I'm willing to do anymore. They can go fuck themselves.
Well, I knew one black guy in Venezuela when I was a child. Actually, two. One of the garbage men was black, and a guy who worked at the supermarket was black. And it just didn't even, it was like, only in retrospect did I think of them as black. And in Texas was the first time I was exposed to a large number of blacks, but you couldn't categorize them because there were upper class blacks, there were upper class whites, there were poor blacks, there were poor whites, there were middle class blacks, there were middle class whites.
Yeah.
And I had a music teacher who was black. I had a geography teacher who was black. Her name was Miss White. And she taught us how to do the Russian squatting dance.
Kasachov.
Right. And there was just nothing, there were no generalizations that could be made about black people in Texas because they were just as diverse as white people.
Of course, because it's people. God damn it.
Yeah.
There are no, if one starts admitting the possibility that there is a intellectual character commonality according to the pigmentation of the skin, one is a fucking racist.
Well, it's the thing that
there is no in between here.
And we've gotten to the point where, okay, the racist is given a pass if he's of the right political persuasion that the press, but then other people who say something who are not racist in the slightest,
and then accused of racism for not
accused of racism, and then they have to, no, I've had it with them. I really, really, definitely fucking had it with them. Well, what I've noticed is that the most virulent leftists who are in the entertainment business, these guys can't stop saying the N-word. Like, you read a Stephen King novel, and it's like, holy shit, this is nothing but N-words flying up into my face. Quentin Tarantino, I watched this movie, what was it called? Django Unchained. That must have set a world record for the N-word being said. That was unbelievable. And it was like, Okay,
Was it always in the mouth of the right character?
uh, a white character and a black guy who was basically anti-black. But it I was never comfortable like when the whole the whole 60s it suddenly like okay they were using all these terms to describe black people.
Yeah.
Like, okay, the guitarist Jimi Hendrix was a rock guitarist. Jimi Hendrix, I never thought of as a black guitarist. I thought of him as a guitarist. And the commentary at the time was all about his blackness, that it was this, the power of the black man, and it just never occurred to me, once I discovered Jimi Hendrix, it never occurred to me that he was somehow separate from, say, Led Zeppelin or whatever, like because of his skin color. He did happen to be black, but that really had nothing to do with his ability to play the guitar and sing. And
Yeah.
it was just really bizarre. Like people, the left was incredibly open with its racism, and it is today. A guy like Stephen King, any novel of Stephen King you pick up has got a storm of N-words in it, and it's like, okay, Steve, this is like getting out of hand. It's like you can't wait to use that word. And okay, it's in the Stanley Kubrick filming, the Stanley Kubrick movie made of the Stephen King movie, the Stephen King novel, The Shining. There's a scene where there's a British waiter and Jack Nicholson are in the bathroom, and suddenly they're dropping the N-word, and it's like, wait a minute, where'd that come from? Like
it totally out of character, but
well,
I almost finish a chapter without it.
It's leftist. It's leftism. It's you're somehow paying somebody a compliment by insulting them with a racist epithet. I don't know. It just gets me.
And by the way, it's not just the Democrats. It's everybody on the left, because Nazis, fascists, communists,
The Green Party.
social democrats, Greens, Democrats, they all share racism and anti-Semitism
Mm-hmm.
as basic traits.
Mm-hmm.
It would take us another 3 hours to delve into why. One of these days we might. But I'll invite people who are watching us to check and see that every leftist party in every Western country and in most other places as well have an undertone of contempt for the poor, hatred for blacks, and for Jews. And you take a look at it, and maybe it's because of how the original leaders thought about these things.
Oh yeah.
And it kind of left an imprimatur in the whole party. By the way, T-Lady says, when we were talking about Clinton's charm and all that jazz, it says Clinton could charm the birds out of the trees. Hillary is another story. Hillary could cause the birds to fly into the trunk of the trees to finish it all.
Yeah, Hillary had no charm whatsoever, and that's why I never understood why women were so in love with her.
I have no idea. I remember that in '92 the Democrats were after the Clinton ticket, the New South, campaigning with the Dixie flag. Come on. It's like you cannot write this shit for a comedy stick. The New South ticket, campaigning with the Dixie flag in their buttons and their stickers, manages to squeal into the White House with 42% of the vote. And the Democrats were, uh, Carville was telling everybody and their mothers how he had won the election. No, he didn't win the election. The Republicans and the right got 60% of the vote, you idiot. Uh, but when they were crowing, the Democrats were saying, we got 2 for 1.
Yeah, I remember that.
And even then pretended that somehow Hillary, whose only job in the White House is to not be in the middle,
Yep.
was going to be a co-president.
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
the,
I remember that.
who the fuck elected that bitch to be? We didn't get 2 for 1. There's nothing in the Constitution about 2 people occupying the position. Eh, regardless of her merits or demerits, there are no merits, shit ton of demerits, but regardless of that, who the fuck elected her to anything?
Well, and that came out at the time. People were
Yes,
saying, "Wait a minute, we didn't elect her. We don't want her."
yes. Emery, by the way, is advancing. The left is a child of Rousseau. Uh,
Yeah, the noble
yeah,
savage.
yeah, yeah. There is something of that in there.
Well, I didn't know that the Khmer Rouge were racist. The Khmer Rouge went out of their way to exterminate ethnic Chinese and other groups in Cambodia.
Even though China kept them alive,
Exactly. Yeah.
even Pol Pot survived, exiled in China. China gave the Khmer Rouge everything they needed to take over Cambodia.
Yeah.
Kampuchea, they called it.
Yeah.
They owed everything to the Chinese, and yet they turned to kill ethnic Chinese. Ethnic Chinese in Indochina, everybody and their mothers is an ethnic Chinese.
Mhm.
I mean, that's, but we're not going to ask the left to be intelligent now, are we? Um, I'm so glad, says Poser Index, we don't have Hillary Care today. We have the same shit, baby. We have Obamacare, which is barely different from what Hillary would have been able to push back in the day. We ended up with this shit. We ended up with this shit by one fucking vote. And people are not treating um, Bannon with the contempt he so richly deserves for being the indirect cause of this. A campaign in Alabama, my friend. Oh well. Anyway, I think we've covered just about everything, don't you?
Mhm.
Let's go for this then. Again, last time, I do it once at the beginning, once at the end. I see there are over 900 people watching now. Uh, if you've been watching all of this time, come on, you can hide it. You like us. You enjoy this blather of ours. So please help us stay on the air. Help us keep our platforms active. This is the only thing that kept us in somewhat touch with you guys when we were banned from all the media. And this is our only guarantee that we will continue. We may be able to broadcast on Twitter today, but frankly, I don't know if we will tomorrow. And it is for us extremely important to keep our platform alive. And the only way we can do this, the only way we can pay expenses, is if you buy us a coffee. And if enough people do, then we not only have the capacity of continuing, but improving. So please do so. The two ways that we can do it now until the hullabaloo between Odyssey and whoever the heck comes in is over is subscribe to at the Brother Lie. Subscribe on my timeline. It's $5 per month. It's less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. And if enough people do it, we can do very well. And the other way to support us is by making a contribution at quadverum.com/support us. Very simple, very easy. And you can make a one-time contribution or a monthly contribution. And that way we can continue with this. Now, somebody says, "Boat guy, how can we contribute?" The support button is disabled. Yes, it is in Odyssey because Odyssey was dropped by Stripe. Stripe was providing the merchant services to Odyssey, and it decided that since it didn't like some channels, it would cancel the entire platform. And we were caught in that crossfire because they canceled all of Odyssey, not just the platforms, the channels they didn't like. Odyssey is working to reactivate this with a different uh, uh, merchant services provider, and hopefully they'll fix it. In the meantime, the only way to support is through quadverum.com/support us right there, or by subscribing to add the Brother Lie. If you have done already, thank you so much. If you haven't, why the hell not? Come on, give it a break. Wouldn't you buy us a cup of coffee? And I think I've said enough with that. So tomorrow we have quad meet at 10:30 p.m. and Tuesday VIP room for members only. We cannot accept new members until this is fixed, but the existing members can still access it on Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you uh, tomorrow night at the quad meet. And Thomas, do you have a last word for us?
Obloquy.
Obloquy. That should be my specialty. Thank you so much. I love obloquy. I love that one. See, I didn't even have to ask you. Thank you so much. Good night, my friend. If you give me that hand, I'll give you this one. Live long and prosper, my friend. You're going to need that in California. Good night.